Is the female lead unable to learn today? Introduction. Yun Si, the first flower on the other side of hell in the world. Also known as Manzhu Shahua.Good at ghostly fire, can be called 100 ghosts, especially skilled in illusion. After encountering the rumored gentle and refined young master Jiuge in shock, she fell into his gentle beauty and couldn't extricate herself. Yun Si. 9 songs, Can I Pursue You? The young master with a gentle smile and a polite shake of his head. The next second, Yun Si successfully took his hand. Yun Si began to take advantage and said, 9 songs and 9 songs, can I hold you? The young master gently refused. The next second, Yun Si successfully carried her up. 9 songs, I want to kiss you. The young master nodded her forehead and pondered, Miss, please take care of yourself. The seductive flower fairy on the other side blinked her beautiful eyes and stood on tiptoe. Easy to succeed. So, the little fairy who did something bad was punished to copy the precepts once. The little fairy continued to persevere. The young master lowered his eyes and looked at the hands of the two holding each other, warm and gentle, with a good temper. Miss, from every family, you should take care of yourself. I don't. The little fairy clung to him, half an inch away. She always thought he had a gentle temper. Until one day, she saw a woman confess to him with her own eyes. The woman approached, the young master's face instantly turned cold, and he kicked her away without any gentleness. Get lost, he said. The woman ran away crying. The little fairy who clings to the gentle young master's embrace every day. So the young master can also be very aggressive. So the young master can also engage in violence. The blatant little fairy versus the seemingly rejected young master, yet secretly infinitely gentle and pampered. Love at first sight plus two-way secret love. Can I come home with you? 1. You are listening at novel full.audio. In a quiet flower shop. Pa. A light gold notebook was heavily slammed onto the table. Too much. The little girl in a red dress lay on her stomach, staring at her beautiful big eyes and speaking in a very aggressive tone. Why does he say I'm stupid? Are you saying I don't understand anything? Yun Si gritted her teeth and stared at the light golden notebook, as if she wanted to poke a hole in it. On the side, the small white flower planted in the small flower pot shook its petals, making a milky sound. Cece, did you misunderstand Lord Jiuge? I feel like he's treating you quite well. Yun Si glanced at it and tugged at the corner of her mouth, feeling annoyed. He himself said it himself, I am just an unknown flower on the other side of the river. Although I look good, it's just that. I can hear every word very clearly. What kind of misunderstanding can there be? The little white flower remained slightly silent. But I still feel that Lord Jiuge is treating you quite well. It whispered, you accidentally fell last time, and you don't even know how anxious Lord Jiuge is. Yun Si couldn't hear clearly for a moment. Xiaobaiwa immediately shut up. Nothing. I just feel that. Lord Jiuge has his intention for you to come and practice. Yun Si's face remained expressionless. No, Xiao Tao Sheng, he just thinks I'm stupid. Tao Sheng. That day, she looked for him with red eyes and said that since he didn't like her, she wouldn't bother him anymore. Jun Jiuge looked at her steadily. Finally, he let out a light sigh and nodded at her forehead, seeming helpless. Stupid, he said, how can it be, how stupid is it? She got angry and turned around with red eyes, wanting to leave. But he held on to her. Then, I gave her this light gold notebook. Stupid Ashi, if you don't understand anything, just go and learn. He held her hand, and a hint of helplessness flashed through his calm and warm purple eyes. I have learned everything that needs to be learned. Then you will understand what I mean. He raised his hand, fingertips lightly caressed the beautiful flower petals between her forehead. The man, shining with the wind and the moon, used a handsome trick, then, taking advantage of her days, he transmitted her into the small world. Yun see. She still feels like he's just criticizing her for being stupid. T to the power of T. Taoxing shook his petals, serious and serious. Lord Jiuge said, "You need to write down everything you have learned in a notebook, and he will check it when the time comes. When you fill up your notebook, you can go back." Yun see. She sneered, picked up her pen, opened the first page of her notebook, and wrote. Jun Jiuge is a bastard. Taoxing. Next second, on a light gold notebook, the content that the little girl just wrote disappeared. There is no trace. Yun see was taken aback by the sight. She doesn't believe in evil and writes, Jun Jiuge is a scumbag. Next second, the sentences on the notebook have disappeared again. Yun see. Peach Blossom on the side let out a plop sound, as if he wanted to laugh, but he was trying hard to hold on. Cece, Lord Jiuge has said that only what you truly learned can be written in the notebook, and the rest cannot be written randomly. If you copy any sentence up, it's not qualified and will disappear automatically. Yun see. Is that dog man a devil? Taoxing let out a heartless laugh. The flower branches all smile and bend. Branches and leaves trembled with laughter, particularly gloating at misfortune. Can I come home with you, too? You are listening at novel full.audio. Yun see looked at it expressionlessly and said, You're a flower that can't even transform. Are you sorry to laugh at me? Taoxing's laughter paused for a moment. Immediately, each person in flower fell into a deep silence. After reluctantly accepting the reality of learning, Yun see sat up and patiently looked around. Where she is, it seems to be a flower shop. The door of the flower shop is closed. At the tall storefront window, there are layers of neatly arranged flowers. The flowers are all placed in exquisite small vases, and the branches are well trimmed. There are also colored lights on the display window, which can make the flowers in the vase look more delicate when illuminated. Yun see looked around. In the flower shop, apart from a square cash register and 2 high stools, the rest are all surrounded by flowers, except for a path in the middle. If a guest walks in, they can smell various indescribable floral fragrances in the air, which are fresh, natural, and refreshing. Yun see, dressed in a beautiful red dress, sat on a high stool, tapping her fingertips lightly. What exactly does that dog man want her to learn? The little girl doesn't understand at all. Brain melon seeds can't think of it, she was simply too lazy to think. After throwing the notebook aside, she jumped off the high stool and walked along the small flower path in the middle. Walking to the door, she pulled up the iron curtain from below. As soon as the door opens, the warm sunshine outside instantly shone into the flower shop. A large light golden light shone on Yun see's face, causing her to squint and slightly raise her hand to block it. Outside the door, heavy traffic, the crisp ringing of bicycles on the street and the laughter and conversation of people on the crosswalk spread into the flower shop, dispelling the hint of tranquility. Yun see leaned against the door, watching the people coming and going on the street, with her eyes closed, unsure of what she was thinking. A beautiful lady standing at the entrance of a flower shop is always particularly eye-catching. Not long after, a series of curious people walked over. Boss, do you sell flowers? Yun see raised her eyes. After thinking for a moment, she raised a slight smile, her eyebrows and eyes charming. What flowers do you need? The male guest couldn't help but blush and stutter, everything. Is fine, let's have a bouquet. Yun see raised her eyebrows and turned to enter the flower shop. After randomly selecting a few flowers, she wrapped it up and handed it over. How much? How much is it? 30. Yun see reached out her hand. After receiving the money, she sat back on the high stool, buttoned the table, and pondered. Suddenly, she thought of something, picked up her pen, and started writing on the first page of the notebook. Today, I learned how to sell flowers. Just finished writing, the notebook didn't react much. Yun-Si hasn't had a chance to lift her lips yet. Next second, the sentence slowly disappeared again. Yun-Si. Tao Sheng. Ha ha ha, ha. Yun-Si looked over with a serene expression. Little white flower's laughter suddenly stopped. Yun-Si slowly raised her hand, a scorching flame ignited in the palm of the hand, burning fiercely. Her gaze fell on the notebook again. Burn it. What will happen? She seemed lost in thought. Tao Sheng. Cece, this is a task given to you by Lord Jiuge. What nonsense task. I didn't agree at all. Yun-Si angrily picked up her notebook and burned it on the flame in her palm. 10 minutes later. Pa. What kind of thing? Yun-Si was so angry that she threw her notebook on the table again. Her hellish underworld fire, although it can burn anything, surprisingly cannot burn it. Dog men are poisonous. Dish hashtag. Can I come home with you? 3. You are listening at novel full.audio. Tao Sheng. Pui. Yun-Si let out a deep sigh. Learning. Learning. What exactly does he want me to learn? She was so angry that she pounded the table. After a while, ding-ling. The wind chimes at the door rang. Another guest walked in. Yun-Si is no longer in the mood to sell flowers. She was just about to say that our store is closed. Just as I lifted my eyes, I saw a man wearing a white shirt walking in. Yun-Si's pupils narrowed. 9 songs. The man is tall and thin, wearing a casual white shirt and straight black trousers. The trousers were not too long, just revealing his fair ankles. Under his sparse and soft hair, his clear and elegant eyebrows and eyes were gentle, and his smile was gentle. The narrow tail of the eyes, slightly raised like a fox, but without any hint of danger. The lips are thin, with a magnificent color that looks like plum blossoms, extremely soft. He walked slowly, every move showing a standard noble young master's temperament, noble and elegant, gentlemanly and elegant. Yun-Si squinted her eyes and remained silent. I saw him holding a small gift box in his hand and walking to the cashier, looking down at her with a gentle smile. Hello. Yun-Si. Don't you know me? She blinked, feeling a bit confused. Wait, is he Jiuge? Yun-Si feels like something is not quite right. The aura on this person is clearly 9 songs, so theoretically, isn't he just 9 songs? Yun-Si looked at his obviously unfamiliar and plain gaze, and remained slightly silent. The man paused upon hearing her words, seeming somewhat puzzled. Do I know you? Yun-Si remained silent. Staring at him, as if thinking about something. The man slightly curled his lips and placed the small gift box on her table, opening his mouth. My name is Mu Han-Yen, and I am the owner of the cake shop across the street. In the future, please give more guidance to neighbors. His voice is clear and gentle. Inside the small gift box, the unique milky aroma of the cake drifted out. It permeates the flower shop. The cake seems to have just been made, with a strong sweet taste. When she reached the tip of Yun-Si's nose, it was like a small hook, making her unable to resist looking over. Cake shop. She curiously touched it and said, Is the cake delicious? Mu Han-Yen smiled warmly and said, You can try it. Yun-Si hesitated for a moment. She glanced at him. The more I look, the more I feel that he is Jun Jiuge. Although their appearance has changed, but the breath hasn't changed. She had sniffed the scent on him very seriously when she was frivolous of him. It's impossible to admit the mistake. The more Yun-Si thought about it, the more strange she felt. Do you really, don't you know me? She asked tentatively again. Mu Han-Yen lowered his gaze to look at her, with a clear expression in his eyes. Are you? Yun-Si remained silent. On the topic, how can a dog man deal with amnesia? She touched her chin and looked at the gentle and elegant man in front of her, squinting her eyes as if lost in thought. After a few seconds, she suddenly smiled and her bright little face approached, grabbing his hand with a long tone. My name is Yun. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mu. Her fingertips caressed his palm as if unintentionally. The charming little girl stared straight at him, her lips curved upwards. If a dog man really loses his memory, that would be fun. Mu Hanyin's expression remained unchanged, as if he had not felt her teasing. It's nice to meet you, Miss Yun, she said politely as she shook her hand with a gentle gesture. Can I come home with you? 4. You are listening at novel full.audio. Mu Hanyin's expression remained unchanged, as if he had not felt her teasing. It's nice to meet you, Miss Yun, she said politely as she shook her hand with a gentle gesture. Yun didn't let go of his hand and just grabbed it like this. She held her cheeks and looked at him with a smile on her face. Her voice was soft, Mr. Mu, do you own the cake shop across from you? Mu Hanyin gave a faint glance at the hand they were clasping, immediately, nod gently. Yun-Si's eyes rolled around as if she had an idea. So, can I have any discounts when I go to your cake shop in the future? Mu Han's lips curved slightly. Sure. I'm a cake maker. You come, I'll make it for you to eat. Free, Yun-Si was satisfied and said, Mr. Mu is really kind. I will definitely support you in the future. She calmly touched his hand, and her little paws began to take advantage of it again. Cake maker, do you have to make a lot of cakes every day? Mu Hanyin nodded slightly. He seemed unaware that she was taking advantage. Her hand remained quietly resting on the table, being grabbed by her. Yun-Si secretly praised how comfortable his hands felt while continuing to talk about the topic. What can you do? Or can you do anything? The man thought for a moment and said, I can make cakes, desserts, baked goods, pastries, and drinks. Yun-Si clicked and became even more satisfied. Mr. Mu is really impressive. Her other restless hand also grasped it. Don't worry, Mr. Mu. I will definitely support you every day in the future. She grabbed his hand and almost wrote the words, light and thin, on her face. Mu Hanyin lowered his eyes and looked at her, coughing lightly with a warm smile. Miss Yun, can you let go now? Yun-Si let go and explained seriously, Mr. Mu, don't mind. I just think your hands have a pleasant cake smell. The curve on Mu Hanyin's lips increased. Miss Yun really likes eating cakes. Almost so. Yun-Si looked at his hand with reluctance and said, Mr. Mu, have you become a family? She propped her chin and smiled. Mu Hanyin paused. He looked at her calmly and shook his head. I'm too busy with work to find a girlfriend. The meaning is, not getting married, not even having a girlfriend. Yun-Si nodded slightly regretfully and said, indeed, when you get busy, you may forget the time. Don't worry, there will be some sooner or later. She solemnly grabbed his hand again and patted it. Mu Hanyin chuckled lightly and nodded, After he leaves, Yun-Si immediately turned cold and looked at the little white flower next to her. Taosheng, is that Jiuge? Xiaobaiwa shook the flower branch and spoke, Sisi, you're not even sure if it's true. How could I know? You should be able to recognize Lord Jiuge after following him for so long, right? Yun-Si remained silent. She can recognize it, but she's not sure the scent on his body is indeed that of that dog man. Every time she took advantage of his carelessness, when she carried him, he smelled exactly like Mu Hanyin. She will never admit her mistake. However, how could this be possible? Is the dog man trying to supervise her and pretend not to know her? Or is it that something happened to him and he really lost his memory? Yun-Si was deeply lost in thought. 10 minutes later, a strong cake aroma wafted out from the flower shop. Yun-Si was holding a small fork and eating slowly, unable to resist commenting, he must be Jiuge. Only he can make it so delicious. Can I come home with you? 5. You are listening at novel full.audio. Only he can make it so delicious. The little girl happily ate the exquisite little cake to the point where there was none left. Finally, she belched and touched her stomach, feeling very satisfied. Taosheng, he must be Jiuge. This is his craft. She used to pester him to make dim sum, he had no choice but to do some for her. Later, unconsciously, I developed a habit. He always carries some homemade snacks with him. She was hungry, so she looked for him. So, Yun knows his craftsmanship very well. She hiccuped and came to such a definite conclusion. Taosheng. Then why doesn't he know you? I don't know. Yun didn't seem to be pretending to see his appearance. If it's not pretending, then there's only one explanation, that's he lost his memory. Yun looked at the small gift box on the table with great interest, seeming excited. Does losing memory mean that she can be forcefully arched? I can't hold him down in the big world. In the small world, she had to sleep with him once to make up for her wounded soul. Yun licked the rosy corners of her lips, her eyes as alluring as silk. Mu. Han. Yen. She, remember. The cake shop across the street. The employees immediately bent down when they saw their boss walking in. Mr. Mu. Mu Hanyen nodded slightly and smiled gently. You guys are busy, I'll go to the kitchen. Employees should say, okay. When Mu Hanyen put on his apron and walked in, cashier Lin Feng secretly glanced at him and whispered, did the boss just go across the street? Liang Zhao, who was dragging the ground, nodded and said, yes. I just saw him walk out of the flower shop over there. Lin Feng let out a strange sound. Did the boss buy flowers? Liang Zhao said, didn't you? Didn't you just say that the boss went out with something? Lin Feng stopped talking. I muttered casually, the boss won't be interested in the flower shop owner across from me, will he? After all, that flower shop lady is indeed very beautiful. He glanced at the flower shop across from him and remained silent. In the afternoon, the scorching sun is shining brightly. The temperature in the air has reached 33 degrees. Yun is a flower growing in the dark hell on the other side, with a natural dislike for the scorching sun. She closed the glass door of the flower shop, then I groped around and successfully found the fan in the flower shop. Before she came, the original body was living a miserable life, feeling wronged. Dad doesn't hurt, Mom doesn't love, and there's a rude and unreasonable younger brother. I can't continue reading, so I came out to work, borrowed money to open this small flower shop. But I don't want to. The days have just started to improve. My parents came to my door and said they wanted alimony. So, the little money I had just saved up was gone again. I didn't even have the money to install air conditioning in the flower shop. I have to diligently water the flowers every day to prevent them from wilting too quickly. Yun sighed and looked at the room filled with flowers, casually tapping her fingers. In an instant, the room has become shady and cool. It's cold and the temperature drops sharply. The little white flower in the nearby flower pot began to feel dissatisfied. Cece, I still need to sunbathe. I can't take it so cold. Yun gave it a faint glance and snorted coldly, excuse me. She picked it up and placed it on the side of the door. The sunlight immediately shone on the petals of the flowers. Can I come home with you? 6. You are listening at novel full.audio. Taosheng was satisfied and stretched out her petals. Thank you, Cece. Cece is the best. Yun looked at it. TSK, tell me about you. You are delicate and expensive, and you look strange. Flowers are not like flowers, trees are not like trees. What kind of breed are you? Taosheng. I've said it many times already. I am peach tree. It was so angry that all its branches and leaves moved. How come the peach tree's flowers are white? And, it seems like you've never grown much. Taosheng. It didn't grow much. It wasn't because there was once a person who tossed and turned it around damaged vitality. Hashtag, it has no choice, its vitality is severely damaged, and it cannot grow at all. We can only continue after absorbing enough spiritual power and restoring our vitality. Tao Xing thought this way and spoke in frustration, Cece, I don't care. As a good friend, you can't leave me behind. Yun Si poked it and said, now you know you're going to rely on me. Who was laughing at me just now? Tao Xing immediately recognized the current situation and apologized. Sister, I was wrong. Sister is the best, she is the kindest and most beautiful. I hope my sister can become a 9-song master and complete the regret as soon as possible. And, Xiao Tao Xing will definitely cheer for her sister every day, help her learn knowledge, and complete notes. Yun Si. It's really the same pot that doesn't open. She pursed her lips, looked up, and looked through the glass door of the flower shop towards the cake shop across from her. It's currently afternoon, the hottest time of the day. The flow of people on the street is much less than in the morning. People are walking in small groups, scattered and sparsely populated. Nevertheless, there are still many people in the cake shop. Through the glass door, Yun Si could see that the employees in the opposite store seemed to be a bit busy. After the last guest walked out of the store, the entrance of the cake shop was hung with a resting sign. It's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the cake shop has closed. The guests who had originally intended to enter were all disappointed and returned. Yun Si rubbed her stomach and smelled the faint aroma of cake wafting from afar, feeling hungry again. At this usual time, Jiuge will make peach blossom pastries for her on time and also make tea for her as a snack. Just now, they should be arguing with each other, right? Yun Si sighed, feeling slightly depressed. The 2 words she heard that day were like thorns, deeply ingrained in her heart, heavy and painful. Yun Si couldn't figure it out. He was so gentle, so patient with her, and never said a harsh word, but why, in my heart, I just looked down on her. Yun Si stood up and sat expressionlessly back on the high stool, lying on the table. She knows, she is indeed an ominous flower, growing up among the dead, accustomed to life and death. Even the petals were filled with shocking blood. But, obviously, she is also working hard to like him. Yun Si lowered her eyes quietly and remained silent. If he really doesn't like her, just tell her directly, won't you? She's not a piece of candy, she can't shake it off no matter what. As long as he says one word, she won't bother him anymore. Yun Si's eyes slightly turned red. He didn't refuse, but secretly looked down on her in his heart. After all, do you want to see her joke? Do you still think it's fun for her to be so stubborn and shameless? It's really she's so angry. Yun Si pursed her lips tightly and wiped away the subtle tears from the corners of her eyes. Can I come home with you? 7. You are listening at novel full.audio. Suddenly, a soft gray-white handkerchief appeared in her gaze. The fair and beautiful fingers held the gray face scarf and quietly handed it over. Above, the man's clear and gentle voice came with a hint of concern, Miss Yun, what's wrong? But encountering something bothersome. Yun Si suddenly looked up. The man in a white shirt was standing there, with warm eyebrows and eyes. He seems to have just come out of the cake shop, still wearing an apron. The sleeves were simply rolled up, revealing the fair arms. After meeting her gaze, his expression remained unchanged, with a smile on his lips and gentle movements. Are you hungry? Yun Si was stunned. My eyes are still a bit red, there's no time to retract them. She looked at him as gentle as ever, fell silent for a moment, and shook her head. I'm not hungry. Thank you. She seemed to have lost her intention of teasing him, smiled calmly, and refused his handkerchief. Mr. Mu, what's up? Mu Hanyan paused slightly. He looked at her steadily. Finally, he calmly withdrew his handkerchief with a gentle tone. I just made an extra small cake and thought, if you like it, I'll bring it to you. I don't know you. I'm not hungry, thank you. Yun-Si seemed particularly annoyed by his gentle and polite appearance. She stared at the notebook on the table, her eyes slightly dim, as if she had a surge of anger in her heart. If you can't finish eating, just throw it away. Don't keep it expired and it will smell bad. Mu Hanyan frowned slightly. Are you feeling sad? It's clearly a question, but when he said it, he spoke in a very determined tone. It's like feeling something. Yun-Si was stunned and subconsciously denied, I don't have it. I'm fine. The man seemed to accidentally touch the end of her red eyes, his expression calm, scammer. Clearly, I am very sad. Yun-Si remained silent. In his line of sight, uncontrollably, her nose became increasingly sour, her eyes were hot, and tears seemed to be coming out soon. Yun-Si hurriedly wiped her eyes and sniffed, I've said it, I'm fine. Although his voice was choking up, he insisted on not admitting it. My mouth is so hard that it's going to die. Mu Hanyan looked at her quietly without saying anything. The grey cotton handkerchief was handed over again. Always so gentle, as if never angry with her. Yun-Si looked at him with red eyes. Seeing her not answering, the man raised his hand and slowly wiped her face. After wiping away the tears from the end of her eyes, he grabbed her hand and placed the handkerchief in her palm, speaking calmly, although I don't know why you're upset. But don't hold it back. If you want to cry, just cry. There's no need to hurt yourself. Yun-Si sucked her nose and didn't speak. Staring at him in a daze, it seemed a bit stunned. After a while, she lowered her eyes and looked at the handkerchief in her palm, her gaze trembling slightly. Fingertips tightened, grabbing the soft handkerchief with a hint of probing. He is really, always so gentle. Yun-Si lowered her head and burst into tears. She is gentle and has a good temper, even if she causes trouble without reason, he never gets angry, but patiently explains to her. A person who is as perfect as white moonlight, she really can't even curse a word. I can only sulk on my own. I can only hold back my grievances on my own. Yun-Si is really angry and wants to cry. Can I come home with you? 8. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and suddenly walked around the cashier, holding onto it. She hugged his waist and cried bitterly, feeling particularly pitiful, afraid of him pushing away. She still stared at him with red eyes. I'll just give it a hug. You're not allowed to push. She was wrong this time. In the future, she will tidy up her emotions. The person with tears streaming down their face tightly hugged him, just like before. It's really she's so angry. If he could show such a little impatience, she wouldn't like him so much. Since he looks down on her, he is cruel and has a slightly bad attitude towards her. Sigh. Why are you acting so gentle? Yun-Si wiped away her tears, feeling both angry and depressed. Mu Hanyan lowered his eyes and looked at her. Warm eyebrows and eyes are like a gentle breeze, with a clear and bright moon, shining like light. He looked at her bright red eyes, slowly raised his hand, rubbed her hair, gently, as if with a hint of comfort, okay. He still agreed with a good temper, without any intention of getting angry. Yun-Si. Shit. Why can't he be a little more aggressive? The little girl became even more depressed with anger. After a long time, a person whose eyes are swollen and red from crying, finally, I sorted out my emotions and withdrew from his arms. Mu Hanyan's shirt on her chest was wet with tears. I'm hungry, Yun-Si sniffed, her voice still tinged with tears. Mu Hanyan paused for a moment, his lips slightly raised, okay. So I'll go back and bring the cake over. Yun-Si shook her head and hiccuped in tears, I'll go with you. She will eat it again. In the future, I probably won't have a chance to eat it anymore. The little girl slowly calmed down and wiped away her tears. Mu Hanyan looked at her swollen eyes, frowned, and didn't speak. He slowly grabbed her wrist and silently rubbed it. So you're leaving, should we close the flower shop? Yun-Si thought for a moment and nodded. After pulling down the iron curtain door, two people crossed the road and arrived at the opposite side. The cake shop has already closed, but there are still people cleaning and tidying up inside. Seeing their boss leading a woman in, the employees consciously lowered their heads and pretended to be working very seriously. When the two of them walked into the kitchen, Lin Feng just raised his head. Hey hey hey, boss girlfriend. Isn't this the owner of the flower shop? Why did the two of them hold hands so quickly? Everyone remained silent. Boss's girlfriend, she's so beautiful, Liang Zhao muttered. Tall and picky, delicate and charming, with a stunning face, unexpectedly, a carefree boss would like this one. A hint of abnormality flashed in Liang Zhao's eyes. After entering the kitchen, Yun Si sat on one side of the cake table. The kitchen in this cake shop is actually not big, but the victory lies in being bright and clean, without any dirt. It seems to be a newly opened one. After Yun Si sorted out her mood, she felt much more comfortable. At least, crying loudly made her feel a little relieved. It's really not possible, no big deal, she doesn't like him anymore. There are millions of men in the world, she doesn't have to do with him. Yun Si washed her hands and looked quietly at Mu Hanyan. Mu Hanyan took out a 6-inch mousse cake from the freezer and placed it in front of her. He took a knife and slowly made 2 cuts in the middle of the cake, then placed a small piece on a porcelain plate and handed it to her. The fair and slender fingerbone swayed, making Yun Si unable to resist looking over. Although she is hungry, she actually doesn't have much appetite. Can I come home with you? 9. You are listening at novel full.audio. Compared to eating that delicate and sweet little cake, Yun Si wants to eat him more. However, she was really unsure if Jiuge had truly lost her memory. If it's just a pretense and she forcefully bows, I guess he will punish her again for copying the precepts. Yun Si felt a headache when she thought of the precepts. She used to like to kiss him. Jiuge always punishes her for copying books, punished 10 times with 1 kiss. Later on, she only dared to secretly kiss him while he was sleeping. Fortunately, when she secretly kissed, he didn't notice it. She can also frequently take advantage of him. Just now she stared at his beautiful hands, silently putting away her claws that she wanted to take advantage of, and lowered her head to pick up the fork. Let's just forget it, she doesn't want to copy the precepts. The delicate little fork gently flicked the small cake, scooped up a spoonful, and put it into the mouth. Yun Si paused for a moment. 2 seconds later, she silently took another bite. The man curled his sleeves and sat across from her, quietly looking at her. His lips curled up and he said, "Is it delicious?" Yun Si glanced at him and nodded. The things he makes have always been delicious. Whether it's peach blossom pastry or small cake. Yun Si lowered her head and ate quietly. In the future, she probably doesn't have much chance of getting it, right? She slowly took a small sip and ate calmly. In the future, can she still find someone who can make peach blossom pastry very delicious? She lowered her eyes and her long eyelashes trembled lightly. Still feeling sad. The man's clear and gentle words came. Yun Si looked up at him. After a while, she pursed her lips, averted her gaze, and spoke in a calm tone, "I'm feeling heartbroken." The man was taken aback for a moment and his smile faded. "Do you have a boyfriend?" Yun Si thought for a moment, shook her head, and said, "There's nothing." Just like it unilaterally, and then. There won't be any more. She felt very depressed in her heart. After chasing someone for so long, in the end, I feel like a joke. She scooped another small piece of cake and stuffed it into her mouth. As he slowly chewed and looked at him, he suddenly asked, "Mr. Mu, may I ask you a question?" Yun Si spoke up, "If there is a woman who has been pursuing you and you don't like her, would you reject her?" Mu Hanyan raised his eyebrows. Qingjuan's face looked at her, with a soft outline, "Yes." Since she doesn't like it, she won't have a chance. He slowly said this sentence with a smile on his face. but between the lines, there is an incomparable coldness. Yun-Si was stunned and said, "Will you refuse?" "I'll tell her directly, don't you like her?" The man nodded slightly, smiled, still maintaining the gentlemanly and courteous demeanor, but invisibly, there is always a sense of alienation that rejects people thousands of miles away. He raised his hand and slowly cut a small piece of cake for her, handing it to her porcelain plate in a gentle tone. "If you don't like it, I will refuse on the first meeting. Because I won't give her any chance to get close." Yun-Si was stunned. The person in front of me is clearly Jiuge, however, why is his answer different from his previous actions? Did you really lose your memory? 3 big question marks appeared on Yun-Si's forehead. 9 songs won't lie, he always does what he says and does what he says. If it weren't for real amnesia, it is difficult to explain the current situation of inconsistent words and actions. Yun-Si stared at him, squinting her eyes slightly. 2 seconds later, she suddenly stood up, put down her fork, and grabbed his hand. "Are you really, Mu Han-yen? Really, it's not a pretense. Can I come home with you?" 10. You are listening at novel full.audio. The man raised his eyebrows and glanced at her holding his hand, his voice gentle. "If Miss Yun doesn't believe it, can I show you my ID card?" Yun-Si stared into his eyes without saying anything. Intuition tells her, the man in front of me seems to really, I have lost my memory. She looked steadily, unsure of what she was thinking. Next second, she suddenly bypassed the cake table and walked over. Arriving in front of him, tiptoed up and hugged his neck. When kissing, Yun-Si stared closely at him, as if wanting to see his reaction. If Jiuge doesn't have amnesia, he would gently push her away and reluctantly nod her forehead, asking her to copy the precepts. Yun-Si wants to try and see if he will have such a reaction. Mu Han-yen seemed to have never expected her to be like this. He paused and looked at her, his fingertips trembling slightly. He is tall, so she had to bend down slightly before Yun-Si could kiss her. When she hugged her neck, Mu Han-yen's arms instinctively wanted to tighten her waist. But because of what to consider, he didn't move. His arms drooped on both sides, as if he was suppressing something. When Lin Feng walked in, he was about to call out to the boss. But seeing the people inside, he immediately closed his mouth and turned around to leave. Not very witty. After 3 seconds, Yun-Si confirmed. 9 songs, she really lost her memory. He didn't even nod her forehead, nor did he ask her to copy the precepts. I didn't even push her away. She kissed him before, and after a few seconds, when he reacted, he would push her away. Yun-Si felt like she had discovered something extraordinary. The 9 songs of amnesia, that doesn't mean can he let her ravage him. Yun-Si's eyes became brighter and brighter, and her gaze at him became more and more eager. Mu Han-yen paused and spoke calmly, "Miss Yun, what are you doing?" Yun-Si hooked her lips with great interest. After biting him, she retreated and licked the corner of her lips, her eyes flowing with a seductive expression. "It's nothing. I just think Mr. Mu looks much tastier than cake." She stared at his bright red lips, with profound meaning. Mu Han-yen looked at her quietly. "Is it convenient to leave a phone number, Mr. Mu?" Yun-Si leaned against the cake table, grabbed his hand, and smiled. "When we have time in the future, can we keep in touch more?" She grabbed his hand and played with his fingers slowly, not too obviously interested in his intentions. Mu Han-yen stared at her without saying anything. Yun-Si didn't move, nor was she in a hurry. I reached out and touched his pocket. After touching the phone, she took it out and opened it. The man's phone has a password and fingerprint unlocking. Yun-Si looked at him, grabbed his hand, and pressed on her phone. The phone desktop popped up. Yun-Si was satisfied with the location and provided her contact information by entering her phone number. In front of him, she wasn't nervous either, slow and leisurely, straight and vigorous. When entering the contact notes, she thought for a moment and simply typed in 5 words. Big baby Cece. Well, perfect. Yun satisfactorily put her phone back into his pocket. Mr. Mu, welcome to call me if you have anything to do. I welcome you anytime. She tiptoed up again and took a sip. Subsequently, I sat back next to the cake table and continued eating the small cake on the plate. Mu Hanyan looked at her calmly, the corner of my lips seemed to bend slightly. The clear and beautiful bottom of her eyes also faintly flashed a hint of tenderness. See. My. Cece.